Hi, everyone. Welcome to the sixth week of the spring semester. And this week we have closed out Romanticism last week, and now we're going to start what's known as the Victorian Age. Now, before we go ahead and start talking about the Victorian Age, I want to make some comments about the projects that I received from students on that French Revolution, the debate between Burke versus Wollstonecraft and Paine. Guys, I have read not just the things that are in our folders, but I've read many works by all the authors that we study this semester. So I know when a work comes from Mary Wollstonecraft's response to Burke, which was known as Vindication of the Rights of Men, and when something that is quoted comes from Vindication of the Rights of Woman. Those are two totally separate readings. Uh, Vindication of the Rights of Woman has nothing to do with the French Revolution. It has everything to do with women's rights, and in particular, the argument that women should receive the same education that men receive. I did not assign that to you. Okay, I assigned to you Vindication of the Rights of Men by Mary Wollstonecraft. I've also read things like Common Sense from Thomas Paine. Um, so I also know what goes in the portions of each work that I gave to you. I actually made copies of them. I made PDFs of them. I put them in the folder. So when you quote something from Burke that is not in the pages that are that I have provided for you, I'm going to know that. Okay. What I gave you was small portions of much larger pamphlets. Burke's pamphlet was over 200 pages. I only gave you, I think, 8 or 10 pages of that. So if you quote from anything outside of that scope, I'm going to know it. If you quote Mary Wollstonecraft, and the most common quotes I got from Mary Wollstonecraft were not from the assigned reading, they were from Vindication of the Rights of Woman, talking about women's rights and women's education, I'm going to know that. Okay, I've been teaching all of these authors and all these subjects long enough to know those things. So what I saw is what looked like people did not read the assignments. They went to websites like famousquotes.com, brainyquote.com. People went to those websites, put in the names of this week's authors, and just quoted whatever came up. Well, you're going to get caught. I've been teaching these subjects too long to fall for that. Okay, so I am very unhappy. There are also people that did not even quote from the sources. They had some kind of trash talk going on among the three, but I did not see any quotes that led me to believe that you actually read the assignments. Folks, you are going to have to read these assignments. And when I ask for quotes, you're going to have to quote from what you're assigned to read, not from what you found on the internet. A lot of you failed this project for not turning it in, which you need to do. And a lot of you failed this project for not quoting the sources or not even having read the sources, as best I can tell. And so you're going to have to start doing that too. So bear that in mind. Another thing, we've got a reader response paper this week. So let me start by talking about the Victorian Age. So the Victorian Age spanned about 65 or 70 years. It lasted basically from the time that Queen Victoria ascended to the throne in 1836 or 37, all the way to her death in 1901. England changed a lot during those years. We're going to take a look at several of the changes, like how women were treated, like the Industrial Revolution, like imperialism. We're going to look at all of those topics throughout the course of the next several weeks as we go through the Victorian Age. And it's called that because she ruled for so long that she had ruled longer than any monarch until Queen Elizabeth II took over for her in about 2015 when she finally passed Victoria as the longest reigning monarch. So, as you can imagine, you have to take over the throne at a very young age. And I think Victoria was about 18 when she took over, just like Queen Elizabeth was somewhere in her early 20s. And you have to live a long, long time, right? Victoria outlived her husband by decades. Um, so look at the introduction to the Victorian Age. It is probably one of the most tumultuous and yet the most more advancements were made during that time than any other time. And then what we're going to have is we're going to have Alfred Lord Tennyson as our author that we're going to read. And we're going to read two of his poems, The Lady of Shalott and Ulysses. Note that these are based upon existing stories. So The Lady of Shalott was based upon the King Arthur legend. Ulysses was based upon the Odyssey by Homer, which was an epic Greek poem. And so, what I'm going to have you do for the discussion this week, and remember, these discussions, you're going to need to have your first response in by Wednesday, and then your, responses to your classmates in by Sunday. I'm going to ask you to think about stories that are based upon previous stories where somebody else like took a character and did something different with that character, or maybe rewrote the story in some way, right? So if you think about, say, Snow White story, Disney came out with some movies called Maleficent, which are based on the evil stepmother. Okay, so that is a reimagining, if you will, of an existing story. So um, take a look at Alfred Lord Tennyson. You cannot discuss the Victorian age and poetry in the Victorian age without discussing Tennyson. Just like Queen Victoria, Tennyson lived for many, many years too, and he was very active as a poet for many, many decades. So he helped define British poetry during these years, and he was what was known as the poet laureate. So be aware of that. So think about the following things. The Victorian age, you're going to get introduced to that and all the politics and all the religion and all of the, background news and all that stuff that goes with that. You're going to get introduced to one of the most important poets, Alfred Lord Tennyson. You're also going to have a reader response paper. In that reader response paper, take the time to look at the rubric. I've included the rubric at the end of those instructions. Write to that rubric. Make sure that you understand the reading. That's part of the rubric. Make sure that you have a direct quote. That's part of the reading, or that's part of the assignment. You have to have direct quotes. Make sure that you show me critical thinking skills and that you're not just summarizing the poems, right? Make sure that you read that rubric carefully and you write your papers to conform to it so that you'll get better grades. Because if you don't, you're going to find you're going to fail and then you're going to be upset about it. So those are my thoughts for this week. And I hope you enjoy Tennyson and this introduction you're going to get to the Victorian age.